Welcome to Warblog. I'm going to have another go at this Harasta district game. Essentially, I sort of figured out why I couldn't drag, and it was my computer, but it wasn't just my computer. I opened so many windows that my whatever the memory was obviously full. All I did was shut Firefox down, and all of a sudden my drag and drop capabilities come back. So I've opened it up again with only a couple of things open. I end up with hundreds of tabs open. You know, I've got quite a high spec computer. It's not that high spec, to be quite honest, but it's not a stupid computer. I know what I'm doing. And well, they advertise these things. It's a 16 gigabytes of memory, or whatever it is, and but you can't use more than 8. If you go above 8, it starts to do stupid things. And all I wanted was a computer that I could have like 64 gigabytes of RAM that was all usable. But I don't know why they don't do that. Anyway, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to play it. And I'm going to utilise my strategy. I'm not even going to reconsider it or think about it, because I just want to do the gameplay. So we've got some mechanised units. So I'm going to move the artillery up. So that's 2.1. So I should be able to get another 2 movement out of that. Let's see what we've got here. 1.1. See, what I don't want to do is move into there and find I've got no more movement. So much so that I'm actually going to leave them there, just so that I can be certain. So I should be able to move there and have 0.3 movement left. Yeah. So I've moved my artillery into a forward position, and that's what I was trying to angle at, I think, when everything went a bit pear-shaped in the last video. So there's my artillery, and clearly it has a 4 range. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can get that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I can get that. So obviously that's my range. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. So it's not too bad, but you know, I can get these in. That's all that's needed. I can move forward next time, and these ones have got 1, 2, 3, 4. It's plenty of range. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So obviously, I've got overlapping fields of fire here, but that doesn't really matter. I can get these units and get all of these units with this stuff here, so I'm actually going to do that. Now, I'm not sure what I want to do, but I think actually I'm going to go for their rockets. Okay, well I didn't get any effect on their rockets this turn. So no effect on their rockets, but I did manage to get almost 1 depression on that. So following that artillery barrage on this stack here, if they don't move, they'll be able to recover. So we've got a nice big stack there that we can go for. Okay, we've got some good damage against that first unit, 1.9. Everything else should be able to recover if it remains stationary. Well, he'll need 2 turns as well. So that's how the artillery sort of gradually erodes away, you know, opponent's capability. So we've done our artillery. So the only reason I've done the artillery first is really because it gives me a base for where I want to be advancing. So I don't. So how far can I get? I'm going to keep this line. I'm going to keep that there, I think. Although, to be quite honest, I did sort of contemplate moving it back, and the reason being is because he's got two lots of irregulars in there. I've got 3, so he'd be able to get, with those irregulars, 10 plus the 2 motorised, 14 versus 3, so that would be a 4-to-1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back there, move that there. I'm not so worried about them attacking here because they don't have enough units, and if they do, they'd have to start manoeuvring within there. I think it's a bit tough. They might be able to put 2 in there and get a sort of like a 3-to-1 against that, and they might even be able to get good odds against this. But how much more movement have we got? Yeah, I can double stack. So what that has now done is given me significant defences. They won't be able to get their irregular bonus. They're too big for these irregulars to really affect them now. So we've got a nice strong line there. So much so that I'm going to use the same approach here. Just about make it. So we've got a nice strong line there, and I think that's going to be the line of force for this northern sort of battle group there on the first turn. So we've achieved our sort of first stage position there, and we haven't completed this one yet, so I won't do that. In fact, I'll try and maintain that draw, that scribble in the background there. So now the question is, where do we want to place the remainder of all of this? What I'm going to try and do is just see how far forward I can move these units now. Now I don't want to move into there because I'll end up in a zone of control. So I won't be able to really get into that hex this turn. No. So building up that line of force there. I'm quite happy that it extends down to join this one here. So now the question is, where do I want to focus the rest of it? And to be quite honest, I think I'm going to fill this gap in here just for continuity and to give me a broader scope for threatening all of the flanks. And it'd probably be better if I move along this road to start off with. I'm going to move this armour into there. So what this actually also gives me is, and it's something that I always try to bear in mind, and that's defence for my artillery. I mean, he can't nip out and get my artillery there. So a nice strong line, nice forward advance line. Now I could do an attack against that, but the point I think I made in the earlier video was that I want to sort of put myself in a position and then consider the offensive. Now it might have taken more time to get into that position. You know, for example, if they've been infantry and they haven't been so mobile, there's all mobile units, so it's quite easy to do. Similarly, I'm going to do the same thing here. The only difference being is I'm not as tough, and I'm not sure that I can get everything through. But what I am going to do, I'm going to move him to there, and this is just sort of off the cuff. And I didn't really think of that, but to be quite honest, he only just made that. They were infantry, they weren't motorised. But anyway, that gives me that sort of strong base there in a like urban. Now the challenge is to sort of build this line up along here, but I'm pretty sure I should be able to do it. So what have we got? Mechanised. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's no more movement left on that. It's interesting really, because I now feel compelled to protect this artillery. Now all these irregulars are infantry, they're not motorised, they've got movement of 3, so he's not really going to come through this gap. He might be able to come down that road if he was lucky. There's all quite a lot of movement. I really don't know what I want to do here, because what I really feel like doing is exploiting into this hex here. But that would just put me in near so many other units. I'm going to leave it like that. So the only thing we haven't done now is the air power and also combat and attrition. Is it going to be worth going up against this unit? I'm going to try put my air power onto here. I was going to go for that bigger stack for long-term attrition. That was quite good. So we've got 0.4 there and 3 there. So the reason being for that is that I think I should be able to do well. I can't really attack. I'm not going to attack with this lot not in the attack, but I can do an attrition there. 0.2. So it all adds up. You know, it's 3.2. I mean, that's not insignificant. And here, he's got a little bit of movement, but I think I'm going to put all my attrition into here. In actual fact, I think I can do an attack. I'm going to, because he's only worth 1 in light urban, doubled to 2. You know, unless my mind is like not working, this is, you know, this has to be done. So I'm going to do an attack, 7-1 DE, and that pushed him back. That was 2-2. I think he went there. Yeah. So I didn't eliminate him, but I've got these units here. So from this stack here, that can possibly move in there, but I don't think he has the movement. Can he get in there? Yes. 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 Well, that was good, because I managed to get that foothold, as I sort of said in the earlier video, and so now, you know, we're only on the first turn still, and this is what I like to propose, sort of to a large extent, is that you find that the situation looks different. So I now manoeuvred myself into a position that I feel that represents a different perspective than it did at the beginning of the turn. Now that might all sound sort of fairly obvious, and to be quite honest, it is. But the thing is, now I've got my advanced line of force there, and although it's divided into 2, with the division sort of being there, it's still quite a nice strategy. Now, it doesn't always mean you have to do it like that, because sometimes you don't have the units. So that, you know, it now looks quite different, giving me a lot more perceptions on the opportunities available. For example, I could maybe sort of say, well, I'm going to keep all of this, because any counterattacks are going to involve them coming out of their defensive positions into a more open terrain, where they would then be quite easy to pick off, and further, they're all stacked up quite nicely, that they're not really going to cause them any problems. The only thing they might be able to do is get some 1-to-1s, and they can maybe even go for some 1-to-2s. They can maybe try something, or we're going to be subject to their rocket fire. That's going to happen, so that's another threat. The only other thing I haven't done here is consider any of this, but I'm just going to leave them there because they're in a defensive position. I haven't even thought about it. So, but I think for the Syrian player, I think the thing that I'd like to do really is to take out this somehow. So focusing and continuing my air power on that to create that line, to pin that down there. But then I'm going to leave most of that there. I mean, it's not permanent. But leave it there and focus on trying to take this out, because the opportunity has now sort of swayed in its balance to sort of this as the opportunity. Now, it doesn't strike as the simplest opportunity because it's quite hard going through this urban terrain, and I would have to sit there whilst I do it. But it seems to me that it's the less risky. Now, I could start pushing these units forward. I could push this line forward along there. I haven't really considered that, but the whole point is to consider the options, etc. Well, I could just sort of drive through here, or getting a toe into those those obstacle hexes there, and maybe trying to sort of threaten and take these two positions out here. But in line with my theory of trying to sort of do one bit at a time, or to focus on sequential sort of logical steps in the strategic strategy. Can you have a strategic strategy? I don't know. But anyway, sort of doing it bit by bit, a lot like that, it just seems more, I don't know, more sort of satisfying from the point of view of stretching your ability to understand and navigate the situation. And that all sounds like probably a load of nonsense, or worse, but I think that's key to sort of how I like to do things. Now the interesting thing is, moving on, is that I'll end that turn, and the interesting thing being, we've not actually in any of this sort of dialogue considered the Ara al-Sham movement options. So it's now their turn. So again, we'll just start off with the bleeding obvious. They have obviously line of defence like that. Okay, so they want to defend, but also want to take this out. Now, I was sitting there a while back just looking at this, so I do like just looking at them on my super huge screen, and I sort of thought, the thing that they've got, obviously they've got their rockets and things like that, but they've got two scenarios. They've got a defensive line here, obviously, as we've just sort of said, but let's just reiterate the obvious. So we've got a defensive line there, but we've also got this section here. And so the thing is, the balance is, from a resource perspective, is how much do we sort of push for this front, and how much do we push on this front, and I think at the end of the day, how much do we consider that we can sort of hold on to all of this, for what cost, and whether it's worth it. For example, you might want to say, we're never going to hold out against all of these units, and so we're just going to run away right now. I've been in these situations where it's quite, I don't say it's frustrating, but it's interesting. I mean, I had sort of, it's maybe a bit of a tangent here, years ago, involved with some role playing, and if you've ever done any role playing and tried to introduce people who are sort of relatively new to it, these people weren't actually even new to it, to be quite honest. But I had this scenario set up, and there was obviously some kind of thing happening, sort of like some sort of demon attacking something, and they were supposed to, it was Call of Cthulhu actually, they were supposed to essentially defeat this demon. I mean, that's the idea of role playing. And they just said, as soon as I sort of mentioned what was happening, he says, "Oh, we've got to get away. We've got to run away. Or no, you're not supposed to run away. You're supposed to. No, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. We're running. We're going away. We're going to get a taxi, and then sort of the hail a taxi and drive us away as fast as possible." Well, it's game over then, isn't it? Really, and it's sort of like, well, it's sort of, you know, I think that sort of in this situation like this, you know, you sort of think, well, hang on, we could just run away. Well, really, you've got to stand and fight. Well, no, we're going to run away because we're going to get blown up. But on the other side of that coin, to some extent, in this scenario, when you start introducing the role play that I sort of quite emphasise into sort of how these games should be approached, what you're also realising here that although it's not been absolutely deliberate, and although the Al-Sham movement, whatever they are, the Al-Sham movement are not party to understanding or being aware of what the Syrian player is actually doing at the moment, we know, because it's just me, that they are sitting here contemplating just holding that line. Now, the reason I'm sort of saying that is because when you look at the role play element, you're sort of like, well, we don't want to be moving forward and attacking or even making contact at this moment because we don't want to suffer the losses. And so that's a factor that in a lot of games people just don't really take into consideration. And I keep saying that, and it doesn't mean I'm not meaning it to sound as malicious as that sounds, but you know, there's that sort of player in all of us, and it's always it's confronting that player in us that I think that I'm trying to say is that it's not just other people, it's me. You know, it's a natural thing to just sort of say, okay, we're going to move all this in here. It might be a natural thing to say, oh, look, we've got an opportunity to fight. But it's not a natural thing to say, well, we're going to take a lot of strategic losses here, so let's just run away. But I think on the balance of things, we've got a defined strategy. So we've got this line here, and we've got this pocket here, and we're sort of thinking, well, how do we align our resources between these two fronts? So here, I think it'd be quite clear to sort of say, and I'm thinking, I wish I could get the colour coding on this, because I can't do it. I could put a little box there, or it'd have to be over here to cater for the big maps, or maybe a box along here, but on the smaller computers that would be an issue. But anyway, it's not. I might do it. I'm just saying it would be nice to have a different colour, because what I'm going to say here is, basically, we've got several fronts. We've also got this one we don't really need to sort of worry too much about at the moment in the light of what I'm saying. But we've got this front here. So if this was a different colour, that would make a bit more sense. So we've got that. It's the city front of whatever that city is. Harasta. Yeah, and it is Harasta. That's the name of this game. Harasta, and this is the base southeast of Harasta. So we've got that front there. So say, well, what resources do we have, and how much can we sort of slow down this Syrian advance, and is it worth it? But we've also got this front here, which is what's that place? Erbil. And again, and then we've got the other consideration of let's just put a line here. This open front, which is the desert pass between these two towns. So that's three sort of strategic considerations of what we do, and then obviously we've got this front down here, which is incredibly small, and then this open pass here. So what I'm saying, we can almost modularize it and separate this up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, and then think, well, where do we want to align our resources across those parts? For example, do we retreat there because we've taken a bit of damage? Do we retreat here, or do we try and again hold that position, etc., etc.? So when you start to sort of consider all these things, so well, what resources do we have for these purposes and objectives? Can we actually take out a lot of this? So for example, if we were to take out, we've not, just to reiterate, we've not really considered the Al-Sham movement strategy before, but in theory, if we could take this out in one go, we could then focus everything against the Syrian forces, in theory. But I don't think that's going to be possible. But alternatively, we could withdraw everyone and create a line down there. But there are not too many defensive features. Now, this is one thing I opened up in my original video that was I felt significant, and I just reiterate that it is the use of these defensive features. Now, we do have a very nice natural line of defence between these Zamalka, Erbil and Harasta, whereas here there isn't really. There's Misraba, but then there's all this open terrain. Misraba, we could go beat Sorba, but even that, sort of pinning defensive features pinning defensive line to defensive features, these towns. So that is, by its own way, quite a natural and good sort of defensive line in advance there. So we might want to hold that. But the thing is, can we? So let's look at it in that modular sense. First off, we look at what what I quite often call a reserve. So we've got a stack here. Now the thing is, it looks like a stack, but to be quite honest, it's not a stack really. There's only 3 units in there, 2 irregulars and motorised. Now, but we could swing that. We could call that a reserve. We could also call that a reserve and that a reserve, because none of these units are actually committed directly to that, although these could be assumed to be associated with that. But they could also, so we could almost consider this as a reserve that could be used immediately to attack this sort of armoured base, or to push through here. We could do either one of those. So it's considering the sort of the potential application. So we could say, well, we're going to hold on sort of an attrition basis here, or alternatively we could attack it. But similarly, we've got another. Well, we've got a couple of other sort of stacks. We've got this stack here of 4 irregulars in front of 2 stacks of motorised, and in here we've got 2 irregulars and 2 motorised. Now, I don't want to call those a reserve, but that's quite a large force, and so I think what we've got to sort of consider is, well, also consider where our rockets are. Now, what I think might do with the rockets is to actually move them into that hex there. We'll still be able to fire, but that will mean they are a little bit more like this rockets. They have a luxury of some sort of buffer between them actually being attacked themselves. And so, but it's sort of like considering, well, what do we do with these? Do we want to keep them there to defend this open passage between the two sort of urban areas, or should we split them up and push them this way and that way? So let's just look at this bit here. For example, we could move forward into that hex there and create a front line across there. So we'd be fighting against this stack here. Now the thing is, if we were to move into there, let's get the drawing tool out. If we were to move into there, we'd have a zone of control there. So they couldn't get any further than that. They couldn't sort of move around there and just exploit. So we could move into there. We could bring him, he's almost a reserve, either this way or this way. And then there's this stack here. This is 2 irregulars. 2 irregulars there. 2 motorised and an irregular. So it might make sense to split the motorised up. So we could have, let's look at it number wise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 2, 4, 6. If we could bring him over, we could have 3 units in each of these, and that's about as good as we could ever really sort of expect to get a defensive line. But the thing is, I think what would be maybe also quite apparent is that they could probably, we could almost expect the Syrian player to take out this hex and to leverage that. Now the significance about this hex is that if they move into that, that's their turn over, so they won't be able to move in there and attack. So it's less of an issue of them moving in there and trying to exploit through here at this stage. But next turn we're going to have to sort of say, well, probably 2 things will probably happen. We'll probably get pounded along this line, and then we will fall back to this line. So we can create a line there, but then that will fall back onto here. And the question then again is it worth it, and is it going to be a challenge for the Syrian player? And now one of the reasons I create a lot of these irregulars is so that you can actually play like that. So, for example, what we might do alternatively, and we're just considering this one little pocket here. I mean, this is like a small map. This is what I like about these small maps. It is that, you know, already it's very small, you know, in comparison to some of the really big ones, which just make it more difficult to play, really. But in here, we've already identified, you know, a multitude of even smaller maps. You know, I mean, if this is probably more sense to anyone that's listened to a lot of my videos, but we could then actually say, okay, we'll take this out. This is a game in its own right, and there is the game. We've got another game there called the something pass, and we've got this game here for that, and we've got this game over here, and then obviously we could have this as a separate game, and we've got all that compounded onto this one small map, which, you know, is quite sort of, it's interesting, but it comes back to sort of, you know, the use of scale and the you know, I mean, this is a small map, and sometimes the small maps don't, you know, give it a lot of scope for a lot of movement, but in this case we've got plenty of that, and we've got plenty of activity happening in all these defined areas, so much so that they could be sort of extracted and played as scenarios in their own right. You know, how we take this, you know, the battle for Harasta. You know, there's a multitude of things happening in here. But the thing is, what we could do is put these irregulars, so we've got irregulars there, we've got two of them there, and just use those in the front lines. So we could, and then keep the motorized units back, because they're going to receive a lot more damage if they get damaged, for a final fight or for a more organised counter strike. But all that said, we've got to consider how much we've got here, and we've got armour, you know, which is a problem. You know, they've got a stack, well, they've got some mechanised units over there, so they don't have that much. It's not as though they're sort of, you know, it's not as though we're up against Godzilla or something. We should be able to sort of at least apply some kind of defence, and I think this, what we're touching on here to some extent, is what I call the limits of capability. You know, I mean, I'm doing a video here, so it's slightly different. If I was thinking about this, I might sort of go for a run or something, and then think, you know, if I was prepared to give it that sort of consideration, an extended consideration, which I'm not, I might come up with another idea on how to approach this. But I'm reaching this sort of perspective of that I've thought enough through that I can't really see beyond that line and the effects of it and their capability to attack. Now, like I said, if I was against an opposed player, I might be able to do that, and to some extent I'm not actually that good at forward thinking like that. For example, well, what the concept I'm sort of touching on there is what you find in chess when you think this many moves ahead. And I think a lot of people, this is one of the things I like about things like chess and these games. A lot of people think they're good at chess because they can play it, and what they don't realise is their own limits intellectually, and that's what these games project to a large extent, is your intellectual limits. You know, sort of going forward in time, so to speak. People think they can play chess. I mean, I can remember playing chess. This was a long time ago. I was playing against some guy. I can't remember what I said. I can't remember. I think I somehow intimated that I was quite good, and he was lucky to have beaten me. And he turned around and he goes, "You're crap at chess." And to some extent, it's sort of, I can't remember how I felt about that, but I remembered it, and I always took that on board to be something that's sort of like a revelation that I am actually crap at chess. And I didn't realise it, and I think to some extent the perception, my interpretation on that is that I don't. It's how far can you think ahead? I mean, just because you're thinking 2 turns ahead in chess, and you think you're being clever, you don't realise that the opponent has the capability to think 4 turns ahead, or has other capabilities, and it's sort of, you know, when you start thinking along those lines, or the capabilities of your opponent, you have to start, you know, addressing degrees of humility and, you know, looking at things holistically and taking on board perceptions that you might not be really at home with because you've never addressed them before. And so this is all about expanding your mind along those lines. But obviously, you know, what I'm saying is I've reached my level of forward thinking in creating that line. And so I'm just going to now, because I've just been burbling, I'm just going to go for the line as I think it should be. So as I said, moving irregulars there, irregulars there. I am actually going to utilise some of that. So I've got 3 irregulars in each of these, and I've got a reserve of the more sensitive motorised units, more dynamic and more flexible motorised units that can be used for other purposes. So that's that. Now I'm not going to commit him yet, and I know the time's getting on, but I don't really care. I'm just going to take it as far as I can. It's obviously not far on the first turn. I'm going to. I sort of feel like I maybe should do this one next, but I sort of, because of the time limits, I'm going to consider what I can do here. So again, it comes down to sort of, do I feel comfortable with actually being able to do anything? Now, I think what I'm going to actually do first is to define some of the limits on what is possible. I'm going to use my artillery. Now I think the thing to do is to fire this artillery, or these rockets, on this stack here. Now another option that I hadn't really considered is taking this stack there. Now the one thing to maybe point out is that these are actually green objectives. Now they're unusual because usually objectives are the opposite colour. The Syrian player went first, and so his objectives are already his own. But the objectives are actually there. So these are not critical, but they're only out there as outliers to prevent the Al-Sham movement player from just sort of really just getting straight in and surrounding these. So we don't need to take these, but we need to take these hexes out here. We've got contact there, but what I'm saying is we could actually use all of this. You know, I mean, that would almost be a natural fit. But the thing to bear in mind there, we can't go into there, and we can't go into there and commit an attack. I mean, we could move into there now and then for an attack next turn, but that's sort of, you know, that's another turn ahead. But we could move everything into there and really try and take this hex out. Now the only thing that will happen there is that these units would then, as they're probably going to do, retreat back into these hexes here, etc. So to some extent it might be sort of worthwhile trying to consider actually cutting off that line of retreat, but that would mean cutting off all of those. Now we could do that to some extent using covert strategy by leaving this hex unaffected, but that would mean moving. So what I'm saying is we would attack these units with all of these being zones of control, but not this one, so we'd have to move out of both of these 2 hexes. So it's pretty much a no-go. You know, that's not going to happen because we'd have to be doing everything from there. I mean, in theory, if we had a couple of turns to prepare, we could do that. So essentially, these units are going to retreat back into there, and these units are going to retreat back into there, meaning these forts are going to be almost impossible to take out. We'd have to siege them. But that's the sort of name of the game. But so the thing is it worth attacking this whole set of stacks? Now we could very easily sort of go for that. What I'm going to do, because of the time, because I'm going for 40 minutes now, and I realise that no one probably really goes through 40 minutes of video, but I enjoy doing it, so you know, I can accept that. I'm just going to sort of consider this position along here. Now again, what I'm going to do, you know, I sort of said I was going to use my artillery first because I do want to sort of commit that, but I'll move this artillery, or these rockets, into there. They can stay where they are. So, do I want to at least try and do something against that? They're going to be worth 6 in desert, nothing. So they're going to be worth 6, but they're entrenched, so they're going to be doubled to 12. So that's no small block there. We can't get an irregular bonus, so we would have 4, 8, 11, 12. We could possibly get a 1-to-1 against that, and a 1-to-1 isn't actually that great. But the thing is, we can maybe change those odds. 1, 2, 3, 4. If this artillery can get into there, probably not. Oh yeah, we can get all of it. I'm going to go for that actually, because the artillery in its own right can achieve results. Well, that's quite good. So he's down to 3.9, 1.96. Now, I mean, that I didn't put a lot of thought into that, but I know that the rockets, etc., are key. But we're putting a lot of pressure on this, which means that the pressure on the Syria player is now greater to actually protect this pocket, because they're going to rout sooner or later. At 3.9 in one go, that was pretty hefty. So much so that their defensive capability is now going to be less than 12. It's going to be like 3. We're going to be now at 4, doubled to 8. So I still could only get a 1-to-1, but they're becoming vulnerable, and they're not going to be able to just sit there. But these ones will, because they've not been, they haven't been attacked. So everything else is now in good order, and I'm not really going to do anything against it. But I'm going to start putting myself in a position to cause attrition against these units. And move them to there, and then to there. So it gives me the 2 irregular forces in there. Not too tough, but the thing is they'll retreat if they get attacked. But I see they're not too good against artillery. And let's bring this motorised unit along this road. 3 movement. Yes, as far as I can get there. Because I sort of want to move into there and help defend that. So that ends their movement, but that splits them up there. I'm going to replace that unit there. That's not a good move, really. Okay, I think that's my first move for this player, but do I want to do what I said I was going to do? I think I will. This is going to be an attrition. .4, so he's now at 5.3. So they're actually suffering in there. So I'm going to move on swiftly to the next turn because I don't think I'm going to do much more than just consider the first turn for the Syrian player. So essentially, the strategy has moved quite well. But the thing that this leads me on to sort of commenting on is the cost of waging war, so to speak. What I'm talking about there is it's not free. You know, we're doing this. Oh, we didn't do any of these. We didn't do any of the attritions along here. Should have done that. Oh well, no biggie, because I'm not going to go much further. But I should have done the attritions there. That might have worked. I would have done something. But there would have been a cost. So these things could possibly have been fatigued. One of these units. These could have been fatigued. We've lost a lot there. Obviously, the Ahya al-Sham movement has focused on that, resulting in them actually being compromised. I mean, he'll start considering routing next turn. So we've now got an imperative to sort of get there and to stop that, because it's clear that they can continue to with that attrition in this area. I mean, the attrition will get them as opposed to the actual attacks. But you know, and over here we've got, you know, you're sort of thinking, well, is it worth taking these stacks? Now we could. So let's think. Each one of these is worth 2 in light urban, doubled to 4. So well, that's not a big issue. But the thing is, for example, here without any movement, we've got 6, 12. So that's a 3 to 1. So that's not too bad. Plus they've got this surround, but it's not really going to bring it up to 4 to 1. So we could probably get a 3 to 1, but that would be one attack there. We can move these units into there and get 3 to 1. So we could probably take that hex and that hex, and we might be able to then get another attack if we're lucky, because these are motorized. So we might be able to take all of these hexes out, but that would be the whole thing. That would be the whole movement. Now down here, we can sort of say, well, do we really want to just sort of keep this line and not make contact here? Because we really want to get through there as quickly as possible to save these units. Now that we could actually say, well, we're not going to hold there anymore. We're going to move into these 2 hexes here, and that would be quite a viable sort of approach. The only thing being that because they're infantry, they won't be able to move into there in one turn, so they could even move there and hope they can do it next turn, which I think would be the thing to do, because if they hold, they're just going to take more damage. But if they move out, they're going to become weaker. So there's lots of opportunities on, you know, how to consider what things to do. And again, we've got the little scenario down here, and I just enjoy labouring this point, but you know, that is its own little scenario. We could have that as a box. You know, the Zamalka campaign. You know, taking that, because we need to take that. But you know, at what cost? You know, so let's have a look. I mean, they've reinforced it, so now we've got 6, and we've only got 8, 14 against them. But they're doubled, so that's 12. So we get a 1-to-1 against that. So again, we can't just walk through that. We can't just take that. Now we could bring our air power down now. I think we used the air power against it last time. But you know, that's quite expensive. Or we could bring our artillery down to bear on that. So we'd start focusing a lot more just simply on this little thing here. But again, we're pressed on the time factor because these units are not going to last forever. So there's lots of decisions to be made here on how to sort of do this and what to do. And you know, one thing that I actually didn't mention in the first video that dawned on me as being quite critical is that we've got this highway. I mean, I've had highways for a long time, but I've just added the curved highway elements. It took actually no time at all. A lot of these things don't take any time, and I don't know why I didn't do them years ago. But the point is, we've got this, which is a road. Now, what I'm sort of getting to here is we want to get to this section. I can't do that. I tried to do that. I tried to sort of do that, what I just did there, deliberately. And I think it might be something to do with my mouse, which has got like a wireless connection. And sometimes it's sort of, I'm not sure whether the signal it's sending is the right one, but anyway, when it all gets all funny like that. But basically, what I'm trying to say is we've got to get there as quickly as possible, and the quickest route there is not through there, because we've got these obstructions. The quickest way also is not necessarily through there, because we've got obstructions there, etc. But what we've got here is a road, and so what we could do is try and and then we've got a clear shot into both of these places from here. So the quickest way to do this would be to secure that road, and I think that's the strategy to play. And although there's only less than 10 minutes left, I'm not actually going to do that. We can sort of say, well, okay, can we do that now? And the only thing to bear in mind actually is that we don't actually have, this is not an open hex because it's got the obstructions in there. Now if we had some engineers, we might be able to go in and clear them, although I'm not sure the engineers can clear obstructions yet. But the point is, we can try and come down through this road. That might be a quicker way to this airbase through, you know, the quickest way through to this airbase might be this way with this force here, with everything else just holding. And again, we just don't have that amount of time to sort of play this through, and we're only on turn 2, second turn for the Syrian player. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to fire first, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire my artillery onto this stack here, but what I'm hoping is that some of these units will retreat into that stack and we'll get a bit more, because there's currently 3 units in there. But we're going to do the first attack on here. I'm just going to go for it. It should be a 3-to-1. Now, is that enough? I don't know. I mean, what are the risks? A DR. Well, that's good with a 5, but that could have been an exchange, and we still got some movement, but it isn't enough to get in there. Well, let's actually consider this in a broader perspective. So I could move down here and take that hex. Which I think I'm going to try and do. Oops, the infantry doesn't have that sort of movement. Okay. Okay, well there's a problem. And this hex. So that's an example of forward thinking. I just didn't have the ability to think that far forward in that respect. But we've moved these units back. Let's see what we can do against this stack. So far they're a DE, but because there are irregulars, they've just retreated. But so far, the Al-Sham movement, the Al-Sham movement strategy has to some extent worked. Now, what's happened there is actually interesting, and again, it's another example of forward thinking. So I didn't think of that. Is that this unit has been retreated from there, but that's a zone of control because of my stupidity moving there, and that's a zone of control. So all of these were equally bad places to go, and it's gone there, meaning now that I'm sort of stuffed, because now I can't move into there. Now I could attack into there again, so if I hadn't moved into there, he would have retreated into there, and that's quite a big stack now. But now I don't have that option to actually move into there, but I can move into here. And let's see what I can get against this. Quite a lot. So, however, what I'd like to do is be able to move into there. He's got 2 movements, so I don't want to commit these. He won't be able to do much, so I'm going to just do the attack with these units. I think I should win. Yep. And that's pushed him there, which again is interesting. Do we have anything we can get onto it? Yes. Well, hopefully we should get a DE on this and he should be eliminated. DR, nowhere to retreat. Worst dice roll ever, but he's retreated. So we've now pushed forward on that line, which means that they're really going to have to consider what they do now. I'm not going to play any further forward because look now, I've only got 4 minutes left. I'm just going to just finish the dialogue off, so to speak. I think that's quite interesting. I think that's quite interesting. I mean, we've pushed forward to there, and we've got our line kept there. You know, even if we don't use these units yet, we've sort of got that foothold. The foothold I suggested right at the very beginning was there, but we've managed to get these 2 extra hexes in there. I mean, this one wasn't deliberate. The thing is, he's probably going to be at risk. I mean, probably will be attacked by this stack here because there's no reason why not to, and they're going to get massive odds. So he's probably going to get eliminated, and that's a mistake. And there's not much that I can do about that. I'm not even going to look, try and delve into whether I can, but I can put my artillery onto that and my air power onto that, and you know, hopefully maybe force them to sort of consider doing something else, maybe moving to there, maybe still attacking. But you know, it's a small game, and obviously I've played it a lot slower because I've been trying to decide things and think about things. But you know, it's you could play this forever. Not forever in sort of time wise. I mean, there's so many permutations on how this could go, and it's such a small little constrained construct. It just amazes me how simple it is to, with these current events, to produce things that, you know, have so much depth in them. You know, I mean, we've only got turn 2. You know, I mean, again, it's one of these things where I think it's pretty obvious that the Syrian player will win, but it's how difficult you make it, how many losses you can inflict, and you know what the best ways of delaying their advance is. So you know, I don't think you can play this and sort of think, well, we're going to win as the Ayat Sham, whatever they're called, player. You know, I don't think you could do that, but you could certainly come up with some sort of perceptions on success, or you know, how well you played the game in you know, in the sense of how long you delayed the Syrian player and all that sort of stuff. So I hope that makes sense. I hope you found that interesting. You know, remember, if you want to play it either yourself or against another person, you know, you can do so once you remember, and your opponents also remember if you play it opposed, and you know, stimulate parts of the brain that other games don't stimulate. Okay, I'll speak to you later. Cheerio.